Welcome to Lawgical, the UAE's first and only regular legal podcast. My name is Tim Elliott. I'm with the managing partner, once again, of the Dubai-based legal firm HBL Yamalova and Plethka here in Dubai. Welcome, Ludmila Yamalova. Nice to see you.
Good to be here with you, Tim.
As always. Now, this episode of Lawgical, and it should be a light episode, a little bit shorter. Everything you need to know about sick leave in the UAE. Now, we've not talked about sick leave and your rights if you do get ill whilst at work for a while, Ludmila. As far as I can tell, not much has changed in terms of the rights and dues that sick leave is protected by law. The change, at first glance, at least to me, seems to be that it's now in line with Article 31 of the new employment law here in the UAE, which is Federal Decree Law number 33 of 2021. Can you tell I read that off a piece of paper?
Well done.
Almost sounded like I knew what I was talking about.
I think I saw one of your eyes was looking at me, so I thought I take it for you were not reading.
It was close. But I mean, that's really the case. Not much has changed, but it's now brought in accordance, isn't it? I guess, with the new regulation, new employment law.
Correct. So as per the new employment law, and by the way, this is the law you just rattled out, which is the law number 33 of 2021. Yes, this is the employment law that applies to the private sector.
Yes, sorry.
There is also what's called a HR law that applies to the employees of the government sector, and there's also a separate law that applies to domestic workers. But for the most part, this particular law covers most of the employees and most of the employment sector in the UAE, which is the private sector. Right. So as per this law, employees are entitled to sick days, and there are very specific provisions in terms of what are sick days and the provision for how many sick days and what sort of the rate of compensation. So this is important to understand that the law specifically provides for it, which means that you don't need to indicate it or include it in the contract. So if it's not stated in your employment contract, it's in a way inconsequential, because this is a legally mandated obligation of the company, and therefore this is your legal right as an employee to have this kind of benefit as part of being an employee of the private sector. So it doesn't need to be spelled out in the contract, because this is one of the questions we often get. While my contract does not mention how many sick days, or does that mean I don't have any? Or, for example, my employer tells me that I have X number of sick days, but which is below what is included in the law. So remember, the law is there to set the floor in terms of the employer's obligation, and not the ceiling. So companies cannot contract away from the law. They cannot diminish their rights that are provided for in the law. So companies cannot, in their contract, reduce the allowed number of sick days as per the law. They can add to it, but they cannot take away from it.
And employment contracts are kept with the Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization, aren't they? In theory, they're kept on file?
It depends on where you work. So if you're on the mainland, then yes. Mainland employees are subject to Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization, which are usually referred to as MOHRE. So that's the authority. But the free zone employees, they're not subject to MOHRE. Free zone employees are subject to their own authorities that govern the particular free zone. So, for example, in TCOM, it's ZDA, which is the Dubai Development Authority, and DMCC is the DMCC, and so on and so forth. So, free zones are not subject to free zone employees, and free zone companies are not subject to MOHRE per se directly. But the same law applies. And as per the law, employees are entitled to, after they've completed probation, by the way, so they're not entitled to sick days during probation. So and any days that are taken, any sick days that are taken during probation are unpaid. So, for example, under the law, probation period cannot be more than 6 months. Now, it's not necessary to have probation period to begin with. You can be sort of a full-time employee from day one, but the usual sort of default probation period is 6 months. So during these 6 months, so if you take any time as sick leave, so for example, you get sick for 2-3 days during probation, the employees so that you're not entitled to that as a paid day. You can take it, but then the employer has the right to subtract the value of those days from your salary, because that's the whole idea of sick leave. You can only entitle after probation has finished. After probation, however, employees are entitled to a maximum of 90 days.
Right.
90 days, and then and it can be consecutive or intermittent per year. So it's 90 days per year, which is important. So it's not like you have 90 days and you use them in 1 year, and so you have no more allotment. So you can have 90 days this year, 90 days next year, and so on and so forth. So it's 90 days per year, and they are calculated as follows. The first 15 days of your sick days are compensated at full pay, so 100% of your salary. So let's say if your salary is per month 30,000 dirhams, or let's say then for the half, and you just had the first 2 days or the first 2 weeks you were sick, or these are the 15 days, then you would receive those 15 days at full pay, which is, let's say, in that case, it's 15,000 for those 2 days. But after that, so it's 15 days at 100% salary, and then the following 30 days of sick leave are at half pay, or 50% of the salary. So this is 15 first days at full salary. After that, 30 days at half salary. So if you go back to the example of, let's say, just for ease of calculating, let's say the salary is 20,000. So additional 30 days, it's a month's salary, for example. So then for that additional month, you would get from your 20,000 dirham salary, you'd get 10,000. So it's 50%. And then the remaining, so because remember the law provides for a maximum of 90 days of sick days. Yep. So now we have 15 of full pay, 30 at half pay, which is 45 days. So the remaining 45 days are at no pay. So you're entitled to take 90 days per year. But out of these 90 days, you have 15 full pay, 30 at half pay, and the remaining 45 at no pay. Now, after that, after you've served but after you've taken your 90 days and you're still unable to come back to work, then the company can then terminate the employee, because ultimately the employee is not available to come back to work. So there's nothing illegal for the company to do if they decide on 100th day they terminate the employee. So they can terminate as long as they pay out all their other benefits, and those other benefits would include the end of service, obviously the sort of the untaken leave, whatever else that the employees would otherwise be entitled to. So they can terminate, which is important to know, but they also still have to pay all the remaining benefits. Now there's one more provision, and that's any kind of, in terms of the end of service, calculating the end of service benefits, any time that is unpaid time that's taken, that unpaid time is subtracted from the term of service for the purpose of calculating end of service. So for example, because there's 45 days that will be at no pay, so if you worked, for example, for a year and a half for a company, so then in order to calculate the end of service, you would subtract from that year and a half the 45 days at no pay. Okay. And the idea there is, obviously, it's the end of service is being accrued as part of you working for the company. But if you are not able to work for the company and provide service to the company, so those days don't go, and that time does not go towards your term of service for the purposes of calculating end of service. And that the same applies, for example, if you take maternity leave, and if you take maternity leave above and beyond the allowed maternity leave. This is only unpaid. Or if you want to take some additional holiday, for example, unpaid holiday. So that any kind of unpaid time gets subtracted from the term of your employment for the purposes of end of service. But ultimately, in short, as far as sick leaves are concerned, employees in the UAE entitled to a minimum of 90 days. That's minimum, and that cannot be taken away. And out of those 90 days, 15 days at full pay, 30 days at half pay, and the remaining 45 days at no pay. And after that, they can be terminated. And
that is enshrined in law. Whether that's in your contract or not, that is standard in the private sector here in the UAE.
Exactly. And this is a specific provision in the law is Article 31 of that same law that you so well remembered, law number 33 of 2021. So this is the minimum benefit. Any company that wants to give anything more than that, obviously they can provide it for that in the agreement. But if it's not in the agreement, so this is basically the maximum the employees can expect. It still, if you think about it, it's fairly generous generous policy as compared to, for example, in other countries like the U.S. in particular. And also, there's also this kind of sort of presumption that during these 90 days, the company does not have the right to terminate the employee.
And there's one more thing I've just thought about. Is it 45? Is it 90 days? Working days, or is it consecutive days?
It's consecutive days.
It is consecutive
Yes.
days. Okay. Sick leave here in the United Arab Emirates for private sector employees. That is another edition of Lawgical. Lawgical Light, indeed, this time. As ever, thanks for watching, listening, or both. Thanks to our legal expert, the managing partner here at Yamalova and Plethka, Ludmila Yamalova. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
Get in touch with us. You can find us at LYLAW, social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Our podcasts are free at lylawyers.com or on your favourite podcast platform. If you'd like your legal question answered in an episode of Lawgical, or you'd like to talk to a qualified UAE experienced legal professional, click the contact button at lylawyers.com.